The secret Jung hid about feminine solitude. If you've somehow found this video, it isn't a coincidence. The universe doesn't whisper to everyone. It calls only those who have begun to listen. And if these words have reached you, it means your soul has entered the quiet threshold that Carl Gustav Jung once described as the sacred solitude of transformation. There are truths Jung never revealed publicly, insights too intimate for the analytical language of his time, too mystical for the scientific world that tried to confine him. He wrote them in fragments, in journals, in letters never sent, in the margins of the Red Book. Among those fragments, one truth stands out, a secret he saw reflected in the eyes of his most awakened patients, the women who, as he said, carried the weight of the collective unconscious in their hearts. Jung noticed something that most psychologists still overlook, that when a woman begins her individuation, her deep psychological awakening, the first sign is not expansion, but isolation. He called it the necessary aloneness of the feminine soul. Not loneliness, as the world defines it, but the sacred retreat of consciousness before it emerges into wisdom. When a woman begins to awaken, life itself starts to silence the noise around her. Relationships shift, conversations feel hollow, old passions lose their flavor. She feels as though she is disappearing, but in truth, she is descending into herself, into the depths of the psyche, where archetypes, those timeless patterns of the human soul, begin to stir. Jung called these patterns archetypes of the collective unconscious, ancient forces that shape human behavior, dreams, and myths. Without our awareness, in the feminine psyche, these archetypes often appear as the mother, the lover, the queen, the wise woman, symbols of creative power, intuition, compassion, and sovereignty. When a woman isolates, when she is pulled away from noise, it's because these inner figures are reassembling. She is being rewritten from the inside out, and that process is not gentle. It burns away the false, the superficial, the dependent. It strips her identity bare until only essence remains. This is the part Jung rarely spoke about publicly. He knew that true transformation for a woman begins not in union, but in separation, not in comfort, but in collapse. He called it the night sea journey of the feminine, a descent into the psychic ocean, where consciousness meets its shadow, and the old self dies quietly. In his private notes, Jung wrote, "Every woman carries within her the potential to become the vessel of the world's renewal. But before she gives birth to creation, she must first give birth to herself. And that birth happens in solitude. This solitude isn't punishment. It's the womb of the new consciousness. It's where the external world falls silent, so that the inner voice can finally be heard. So if you've been feeling the pull inward, the need to be alone, to detach from noise, to retreat from patterns that once defined you, this is not regression. It is initiation. The universe is not abandoning you. It's initiating you into the mystery that Jung called individuation, the sacred marriage between your conscious self and your deeper, eternal soul. The privilege of a lifetime, Jung said, is to become who you truly are. And yet, to reach that truth, the woman must pass through 7 gates, 7 archetypal initiations that mirror the evolution of the feminine soul within the collective unconscious. They are not lessons to learn, but thresholds to live through. Each one is both death and rebirth, each one revealing a different face of the self. So tonight, as you listen, don't just hear these words, feel them, because if you found this video, you're already walking the path. The journey begins in silence, in the first tremor of awareness that whispers, "The life I once lived no longer fits. The woman I am becoming." From that whisper begins Initiation 1, the archetypal vision, seeing through others. The first sign that your consciousness is awakening is not joy, it is vision, not the kind that looks outward, but the kind that begins to see through. When the feminine soul starts to rise, her eyes no longer belong to the surface world. She begins to see beneath faces, beneath words, beneath gestures, into the invisible field of emotion that shapes them all. She feels the energy in a room before anyone speaks. She senses the sadness behind the smile, the tension behind laughter, the pain behind perfection. And at first, this sensitivity feels like a curse, because when you begin to see everything clearly, you can no longer pretend. Carl Gustav Jung wrote that the feminine psyche is the bridge between consciousness and the collective unconscious. That means a woman doesn't just feel her own emotions. She carries the unspoken weight of the world. She becomes the instrument through which humanity's hidden grief is felt. That is why so many awakened women feel tired, not from doing too much, but from feeling too much, from holding emotions that were never hers to begin with. This is the moment the universe calls her inward, because before her vision can serve others, it must first be purified. You cannot heal the collective if you are still drowning in its waters. So, solitude becomes sacred, not isolation, but integration. Jung believed that every act of deep seeing is an initiation into archetypal consciousness. When you see others clearly, you are not merely observing, you are remembering, because every human face is a mirror of the archetypes living within the collective unconscious. The mother, the lover, the child, the wise one, they exist in everyone, including you. And when you recognize them in another, you awaken them within yourself. That is why seeing through others hurts at first, because what you are truly seeing is your own reflection multiplied. When this vision awakens, life becomes a paradox. You understand everything more deeply, yet you feel detached. You love more profoundly, yet you withdraw from chaos. You empathize with everyone, yet you crave silence. This is not detachment, it is discernment. The feminine intuition is learning its sacred boundaries. Your empathy is evolving into intelligence, a refined awareness that no longer absorbs pain, but simply witnesses it. Jung called this transformation the movement, from projection to perception. It is the first great threshold of awakening. You begin to reclaim the energy you once scattered outward, the endless analyzing, fixing, pleasing. You start to see that not everything you feel is yours to heal. Not every wound that appears before you is your calling to mend. Sometimes your role is simply to hold light, to see clearly without intervening, and that act of pure seeing is one of the most powerful forms of healing there is, because light, when it is not distorted by fear, naturally illuminates truth. This is the first initiation of the awakened feminine soul, the archetypal vision. It is the realization that your sensitivity is not a weakness to hide, but a wisdom to honor. You are not too emotional. You are tuned to the heartbeat of the collective psyche. You are not too quiet. You are listening to the symphony that plays beneath human consciousness. So when your eyes start to see through the world, when everything feels transparent and raw, don't resist it. This is not the end of your innocence. It is the beginning of your vision. And from that vision emerges the next initiation, the death of the dependent ego. The death of the dependent ego. Every woman who awakens must pass through a quiet death. It is not the end of her body or her breath, but the ending of her dependency, the soft dismantling of the girl who once believed that love must be earned by being small. You will know this death by its silence. The world grows distant. The voices that once guided you begin to fade. The people who defined you seem far away, as though a veil has been drawn between you and everything you knew. At first, you will try to hold on. You will reach for the familiar voices, the ones that told you who you were, the ones that made you feel safe. But they will no longer answer, because this is the moment your soul has chosen to grow beyond dependency. Carl Gustav Jung wrote that the ego must die so that the self can be born. The dependent ego is the version of you that learned to survive by pleasing, by adjusting, by staying quiet when your truth was inconvenient. She believed that safety came from being chosen. She did not know that the real safety was meant to come from within. So life begins to pull her illusions apart. Gently, but relentlessly, you begin to lose interest in things that once mattered. The approval that once thrilled you now feels empty. The attention that once felt like air begins to suffocate. This death is not punishment. It is liberation disguised as loss. You are being weaned off the emotional sugar that kept you asleep to your own power. You are learning that love without awareness is dependency. That attachment without consciousness is bondage. So the universe takes you into solitude again, where no one else's opinion can reach. At first it hurts. The ego panics. It whispers, "No one cares. No one sees me." But beneath that fear, there is another voice rising. It is softer, older, wiser. It says, "Finally, now you can see yourself." This is the sacred death Jung spoke of, the collapse of the false center, so that the true self can take its place. When this happens, the heart feels broken open. But look closely. You are not breaking down. You are breaking free. Every piece that falls away reveals a deeper layer of truth. Every silence uncovers a hidden strength. Every goodbye becomes an opening through which your own soul begins to speak. You start to realize that love was never meant to be begged for. It was meant to be embodied. You no longer ask to be seen. You begin to see yourself. You no longer wait for validation. You breathe in your own presence and feel whole for the first time. And in that quiet wholeness, something miraculous begins to shift. Your energy changes. Your gaze steadies. Your voice softens, but grows sure. You no longer chase connection because you are connected. You no longer reach outward for belonging because you belong to your own center. This is the death of the dependent ego, the transformation that turns survival into sovereignty. You stop saying, "Choose me," and start whispering, "I am already chosen by life itself." And when you finally stop reaching, the universe starts moving. It begins to rearrange itself around your new vibration. People who cannot meet your truth drift away, but those who can see your light without fear begin to appear as if summoned by fate, because now your soul is broadcasting on a higher frequency, and that signal calls back only what is aligned. This is how power begins to rise within the feminine, not with force, but with authenticity, not with noise, but with presence. Carl Jung called this stage the return of the self from the ashes of identification. It is the phase where you stop being defined by who you are to others and begin living as who you are to yourself. So, if you feel like everything familiar is falling away, if the world seems too quiet, too empty, remember, you are not being abandoned. You are being reclaimed. You are not losing love. You are losing your need to earn it. And as this version of you dissolves, the woman you are becoming begins to rise, steady, luminous, whole. This is not the end of you. It is the return of you. The death of the dependent ego is not a tragedy. It is your initiation into freedom. And when the silence finally feels like peace, you are ready for what comes next. The descent, the night sea journey, where everything false is stripped away, and the woman within begins to meet her shadow. The descent, the night sea journey. Every woman who awakens must, at some point, descend, not into despair, but into depth. Carl Gustav Jung called it the night sea journey, the archetypal descent into the underworld of the psyche, where the surface self dissolves, and the soul begins to breathe again. This is not a journey anyone chooses consciously. It arrives like a storm you didn't see coming. One day, everything seems stable. The next, the world feels unrecognizable. The things that once gave you comfort now taste hollow. The relationships that once defined you suddenly feel like cages. Even your own reflection in the mirror feels like a stranger watching you disappear. You are not disappearing. You are being unmade. Jung wrote that no one becomes conscious without pain. Every birth begins with contraction, and every soul, before it ascends, must pass through its own sea of darkness. You may feel like you are losing yourself, but you are only losing the parts that were never truly you. You may feel like you are sinking, but you are only descending to retrieve what you once abandoned. The descent is not a punishment from the universe. It is a summoning from your own unconscious, a sacred demand for integration. The shadows that rise now are not enemies to destroy. They are memories of the unlived life, calling you home. At first, it will feel like chaos. Emotions you thought you had buried will rise with no warning. Anger, grief, shame, old fears you thought you'd outgrown. Do not resist them. They are the language of the deep, and only through them can you begin to understand your true story. The woman you were, the pleaser, the caretaker, the performer, was never the full truth of who you are. She was the surface reflection. The descent asks you to meet the deeper woman beneath the reflection. She is raw. She is fierce. She is untamed and entirely real. The world has called her too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too unpredictable. But Jung would say, she is the unconscious feminine seeking the light. This journey is the part of your evolution that no one claps for. No one will see you transforming here. You will cry quietly, heal privately, and confront yourself in the dark, where no eyes are watching. And yet, this is where true power is born. Because when you can face your own darkness without needing to escape it, you no longer fear it in anyone else. You begin to see the world differently. Every person you meet becomes a reflection of the same collective psyche. You realize that light and shadow are not opposites, they are partners. You cannot reject one without losing the other. When you stop fighting the descent, something miraculous happens. The darkness begins to soften. You start to see small flickers of light moving beneath the surface. Dreams, symbols, synchronicities, they are messages from the unconscious, guiding you through the sea. Jung once wrote, "In the deepest abyss, we meet the most luminous treasures." And it's true. When you finally stop running, you discover that your shadow was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to free you. So if you feel like you've been stripped bare, like your life has been emptied of meaning, if you wake in the night and wonder, what is happening to me? Remember this. You are in the initiation. The descent is the sacred passage from personality to essence, from noise to knowing. Everything that once felt solid must dissolve so that truth can emerge. And one day, without announcement, without applause, you will realize that the storm has calmed, the sea around you is still, and the woman who rises from that ocean is not the same one who fell in. She sees differently. She breathes differently. She no longer fears darkness because she has become its light. This is the night sea journey, the initiation that burns away illusion until only the real remains. You are not being broken. You are being tempered. You are not being punished. You are being purified. And when the fire is done, what will be left is gold, the gold of your own soul, solid, steady, unshakable. And from that gold, the next phase begins, the communion with the unseen, the moment when your soul tunes itself to the collective unconscious, and the universe begins to speak through your dreams. The next initiation is communion with the collective unconscious. Communion with the collective unconscious. After the descent comes silence, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence that vibrates with invisible life. You begin to notice that everything around you seems to whisper in a new language. The wind, the clock, the eyes of strangers. A number repeats itself. A song you haven't heard in years plays at the exact moment your heart breaks open. You dream of symbols, oceans, serpents, doors, mirrors, and somehow you know they are not random. You are entering communion with what Carl Gustav Jung called the collective unconscious. Jung said that beneath our individual stories lies a vast ocean of shared memory, a realm that connects every soul, every myth, every dream that humanity has ever known. It is the place where all archetypes live, those eternal patterns that shape every human life, from the inside out. When you begin to awaken, you no longer move through life as an isolated being. You start to sense that you are being moved, as if something larger, older, infinitely wiser, is dreaming through you. This is not imagination, it is participation. You are beginning to live in rhythm with the archetypal field itself. At first, it feels almost mystical. You see repeating numbers. You sense people before they call. You feel the mood of a city when you wake. It can feel overwhelming, as though your mind is too porous, your heart too open. But this is not madness. It is expansion. You are learning to navigate a deeper intelligence, what Jung called the autonomous psyche. It speaks in images, symbols, sensations. It does not argue, it reveals. It does not shout, it synchronizes. Every coincidence now becomes conversation. Every dream becomes instruction. Every silence becomes a doorway through which the invisible world sends its guidance. And this is the sacred paradox. The more you surrender to this intelligence, the less control you seem to have, yet the more aligned your life becomes, because your consciousness is no longer fighting the current. It has become the river. The choices you make no longer come from fear or logic alone. They arise from an inner knowing, as if your soul is remembering its own map. You begin to trust the timing of things. You begin to see beauty in what leaves, not only in what stays. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start whispering, "Of course." In this communion, your energy changes. The people you meet begin to mirror your inner landscape. They speak the words your soul needed to hear. They arrive like echoes of dreams you had long ago. Nothing feels random anymore, because in truth, nothing ever was. You are remembering that your consciousness is a thread in the great tapestry of existence. And when you align with it, your personal story becomes mythic. Jung said, Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. 10. But once you become conscious of this connection, you realize that fate was never punishment. It was guidance. Every loss, every heartbreak, every delay, every silence, each one was the psyche, speaking in its own symbolic way. This is the fourth initiation, the communion with the collective unconscious. You are no longer a single drop, adrift in the ocean of life. You are the ocean, realizing it was water all along. Your dreams are no longer random. They are instructions from the depths. Your intuition is no longer fragile. It is the compass of the soul. And your solitude is no longer isolation. It is signal clarity. The noise of the world fades, and the voice of the unconscious becomes music. So when coincidences begin to multiply, when life starts to feel orchestrated by something you can't quite explain, don't doubt it. Listen. The archetypes are speaking through you. The collective unconscious is guiding you. You are not merely living your life. You are living the life of humanity itself through your own heartbeat. This is the communion, the sacred conversation between your soul and the soul of the world. And from this connection, a new force begins to awaken. The courage to show your true face, to tear down the mask, and to live as your authentic self. That is the next threshold, the fall of the persona. The fall of the persona. After you have touched the vast silence of the collective unconscious, after you have listened to its symbols and rhythms, something begins to shift inside you. You realize you can no longer play the same roles. You can no longer wear the same masks. The outer shell that once kept you safe now feels too tight for your expanding soul. Carl Gustav Jung called this moment the fall of the persona, the collapse of the mask we build to survive a world that fears authenticity. For years, that mask served you. It helped you belong. It helped you feel loved. It gave you a name, a function, a place to stand. But every persona is a compromise between truth and approval. It hides the depth of your being beneath layers of politeness, perfection, and performance. You played the good woman, the dependable one, the selfless mother, the composed professional, the calm friend who never breaks. And somewhere along the way, you began to confuse those roles with who you truly are. But the soul cannot breathe behind a mask forever. So one day, it begins to tear, not violently, but inevitably. The cracks appear in your smile. The tremor rises in your voice. The truth you've swallowed for years starts to tremble at the edges of your silence. At first, it feels terrifying. To remove the mask is to risk being seen and judged. You fear you will lose love if you show your truth. But what you discover is far more radical. You only ever lost yourself by hiding it. Jung said, "The persona is that which, in reality, one is not, but which oneself and others think one is." To drop the mask, then, is to stop performing and start living. When the persona falls, your voice changes. It becomes slower, deeper, quieter, because you no longer speak to impress. You speak to connect. Your eyes change. They no longer search for approval. They begin to recognize, and your energy changes. People may pull away, unable to handle the truth you now embody. Let them go. Their leaving is not rejection. It is resonance sorting itself out. For the first time, your life begins to align, not with expectation, but with essence. You start saying no without apology. You stop explaining your boundaries. You no longer overextend to prove your worth. You begin to realize that peace is a higher currency than attention. This is the moment when authenticity becomes your sanctuary. You no longer seek to please. You seek to be present. The outer noise fades, and what remains is a quiet pulse, your own rhythm returning. You start creating not from ambition, but from alignment, loving not to fill emptiness, but to overflow truth. It's strange at first, to stand in your naked honesty, to feel exposed but free, to realize that you have nothing left to defend. But beneath the vulnerability, there is a deeper power, the kind that does not need to prove itself, because once the mask falls, nothing false can survive the light, and nothing real can ever be taken from you again. This is the fifth initiation, the fall of the persona. It is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And as your mask dissolves into dust, you begin to feel something rise from within, a quiet, creative force that flows through you like light through clear water. It is your essence, your original vibration, the part of you that was never touched by fear. You are no longer living behind a name or a role. You are living as consciousness itself, unmasked, unfiltered, unafraid. The woman who emerges from this moment is not louder, but more luminous. Her very presence speaks truth without words. She is no longer an image in the mirror. She is the mirror, the reflection of the soul in its purest form, and from that transparency flows the next awakening, the sacred solitude that no longer feels empty, but creative, fertile, alive. That is the next threshold, the creative solitude. After the mask shatters, a new kind of quiet begins to settle in. You find yourself sitting in rooms that once felt too empty, and now they feel sacred. This is initiation 6, the creative solitude. You stop fearing your own company. You stop needing noise to prove you exist. The silence that once frightened you starts to sound like music written for your soul alone. Carl Gustav Jung called this the alchemy of the self, the transformation of psychic energy from survival into creation. When the persona falls, the energy you once spent maintaining appearances returns to its source. It becomes raw material light, breath, imagination. You begin to write, to paint, to move, to dream, not to be admired, but to translate the invisible into form. Every gesture, every word, every act of beauty feels like a conversation with the unconscious. In solitude, you realize you were never truly alone. You are surrounded by archetypes, by the great patterns of the collective unconscious, moving through you, the mother who creates, the artist who reveals, the mystic who listens. They whisper through your hands, through your heartbeat, through the way you see color in the ordinary. You understand why Jung wrote that the unconscious seeks expression, not repression. When you honor that need to express, you become a bridge between worlds, a translator of symbols, a vessel for renewal. Your creativity may not look grand. It might appear in the way you make tea or how you arrange light across a table, but it carries the same vibration as stars being born. Because what matters is not what you create, but the consciousness from which it flows. In this solitude, time softens. Days stretch wide, moments feel eternal. You begin to see that productivity was never the goal. Presence was. You realize that silence is not empty. It is space, and space is sacred because it allows the soul to breathe. Slowly, the boundary between you and life dissolves. You become both observer and participant, both question and answer. The feminine energy within you, once restless, once seeking, now moves like a river that knows its way to the sea. You discover that inspiration is not something you chase, it's something you receive. You do not hunt for meaning, You allow it to arrive, and when it does, it feels like grace. This is the power of creative solitude. It is not withdrawal from the world, but communion with it at a higher frequency. Through the stillness, your heart begins to pulse in rhythm with existence itself. You sense the breath of the universe moving through you, creating worlds within and without. And from that deep stillness, a new sovereignty emerges. The awareness that you need nothing outside yourself to feel whole. This is the sixth initiation. The moment you become the artist of your own being, you do not decorate life, you generate it. You do not wait for inspiration, you embody it. And as you create from this sacred silence, something begins to crystallize in your awareness, a calm, grounded strength that no longer seeks, no longer proves. It is the quiet majesty of a soul that has found its center. From here, the path leads toward its crown. Initiation 7. Sovereignty. The woman who becomes her own temple. Sovereignty. The woman who becomes her own temple. After all the shedding, all the silence, all the surrender, something still and luminous begins to rise within you. You no longer seek the temple. You realize you are the temple. The sacredness you once looked for in others, in love, in guidance, in belonging, has moved into your own breath. It lives in your quiet presence now, in the way you walk through the world. Without apology, Carl Gustav Jung said that the process of individuation leads to the birth of the self, the union between the conscious and the unconscious, between human and divine. And this is what sovereignty truly means. It is not domination, it is integration. The woman who becomes whole no longer fights the masculine within her, nor fears her own feminine depth. She allows both to exist. The clarity and the softness, the direction and the flow, the structure and the surrender, they dance together inside her, like sunlight on water. You can feel it now, how peace no longer depends on anyone's behavior, how worth no longer trembles under the weight of rejection. Your center holds, your energy is steady, magnetic, quietly unshakable. You do not chase love anymore. You radiate it. You do not demand recognition. You embody it. This is the transformation that Jung called the return of the self to the self. Everything you once sought to control now moves around you in harmony. People come and go with ease. What leaves does not wound you. What stays does not confine you. You trust the flow of life because you have become part of its rhythm. The storm that once defined you has become your sea. The fire that once consumed you has become your light. And so the feminine soul stands at last in her full majesty, not as queen over others, but as queen of her own being. Her crown is invisible, for it rests not on her head, but in her consciousness. It is the awareness that everything sacred has always lived within her. The need to prove dissolves. The hunger to be chosen fades. She no longer reaches outward for affirmation. She looks inward and finds infinity. This is sovereignty. It is not loud. It does not need to announce itself. It moves quietly, like the moon shaping the tides. She no longer needs to be understood, to feel seen. Her presence alone speaks. Her silence is prayer. Her joy is worship. You begin to see that every pain had purpose. Every ending was a threshold. Every loss was an act of initiation. You realize that the divine never left you. It simply waited for you to recognize yourself as part of it. Wholeness is power, but it is not the power to control. It is the power to allow, to move with life instead of against it, to meet both light and darkness with the same open heart. And in that heart, there is no longer striving No longer fear, no longer division. There is only stillness. The stillness of a soul that has remembered its source. This is the seventh initiation, the culmination of all that came before. The woman who becomes her own temple no longer seeks to escape the world, for she has found the divine within it. She lives not as a reaction to life, but as a reflection of it. Her every breath is a benediction. Her very being is a sanctuary. And when you reach this place, you understand what Jung meant when he wrote, "The woman who has become whole is no longer a part of the world. She becomes its meaning." So breathe now. Feel the crown of stillness settle over you. Feel the ground beneath your feet, anchored in eternity. You have walked through shadow and silence, through grief and grace, through descent and rising, and now you stand in the sacred center, the meeting place of heaven and earth, body and soul, human and divine. You are the temple. You are the prayer. You are the light that never needed permission to shine. And this is sovereignty. The breath of return. Before you go, pause with me for a moment. Close your eyes if you can. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath slow down. Inhale gently, not to fill yourself, but to remember that you already are full. Exhale softly, not to let go, but to make space for what is real. The journey you just walked through was not just a story of transformation. It was the mirror of your own becoming. You have seen your shadow. You have met your silence. You have felt the fire and found the stillness within it. And now, as you breathe, something ancient in you exhales too. The old self, the old story, the old need to be anything other than whole. Carl Gustav Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You have done that today, not by learning something new, but by remembering what was never lost. So breathe again. Feel the air touch the back of your throat. Feel your lungs expand like wings. Feel your heart steady like a drum of quiet thunder. You are not on your way to peace. You are peace. When you return to your center, you are not searching for light. You are the light. When you stop running from your own shadow, you are not becoming someone new. You are becoming someone real. If this journey touched something in you, stay. Subscribe not to another channel, but to your own awakening. Each week, we walk together through the language of Jungian psychology, through the archetypes and the collective unconscious, through the quiet art of healing from within. This isn't about learning to be more. It's about remembering that you already are enough. So, as you close this video, don't rush back into noise. Sit for one more breath. Let the silence settle around you like warm light, and whisper softly, as a promise to yourself, "I am whole. I am here. I am home."